The first Capitol rioter to be sentenced in the January 6th attack is a woman who pleaded guilty to trespassing in the Capitol. On the day of the attack, she posted on Facebook that it was the best day ever, according to her court filings. But in court this week, she stood before a judge. She cried. She apologized to the court and to the American people. And he gave her 3 years of probation and a $500 fine instead of prison time, saying that she didn't participate in the violence. But then, just a day later,
why did you go to the Capitol that day?
I went to support Donald Trump, to show my support.
To show support for a complete and utter lie, to be clear, that the election could be overturned.
Where I was at, we seen nobody damage anything. And people were actually very polite. I had a young man accidentally knock my phone out of my hands, and he's like, "Oh, excuse me." And he hurried up and picked up my phone and made sure it was okay. If anybody bumped into anybody, it was "excuse me." And people were very polite. And there was nobody was breaking anything. And it was calm enough that people were actually walking out of the Capitol building that worked there, walked right past us. And they had no fear on their face at all.
People died. Officers were beaten. They were called pigs, effing traitors. The Capitol was vandalized, but people were polite, she says. Nobody damaged anything. Not that she could see anyway, sure. By the way, in court, before this interview, she also described how she's a changed person because she watched Schindler's List and read Just Mercy.
But I read the books. It didn't bother me because I'm not racist. And they were interesting. And, you know, I would recommend anybody read Just Mercy because it was a very emotional book. But it didn't bother me. I was more than willing to read them because I'm not racist.
Her lawyer told New Day that she makes her clients pick from a reading list in order to take them as clients. Unclear, though, why watching Schindler's List or reading Just Mercy may have prevented her from going to the Capitol that day, but whatever. And look at the banner there as she spoke. Riot, in air quotes, because that is, after all, Fox, one of the preferred networks of the alleged Capitol rioters, according to a lawyer defending at least one of them. Fox, where instead of hard-hitting questions about her involvement or what she was apparently remorseful for, she got the hero treatment.
Thank you for telling this story, and this is just, it's like I can't even believe I'm hearing any of this. A charge for parading through the Capitol. For that, you're held for 2 days. Lose your job, and obviously incredibly traumatic. But I'm glad you read a couple decent books, I guess. Thank you.
That is the reaction for a white defendant charged with illegally entering the Capitol building as Congress was accepting the certification of a secure election. But this is how Laura Ingraham described black defendants who broke into buildings during a riot.
And what began as peaceful protesting ended up in a very counterproductive and even criminal place. Excusing criminal behavior as somehow justified when it's carried out in response to police brutality or any other abuse only ends up making a bad situation worse because it lowers the bar for everybody.
Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the communists, and their allies are executing a plan they wrote about 4 or 5 years ago. Just go back and read what they wrote in the manifestos that they wrote, including Black Lives Matter. They want to destroy our government. Black Lives Matter wants to come and take your house away from you. They want to take your property away from you.
Yeah, this is where it all happened. May 27th, 2 days after the killing of George Floyd. This is the famous door where everyone was coming in and out during the nights of the riots and the looting. They took as much as they could out that door.
That's right. She even parachuted into Minneapolis to highlight the riots so that she would have some props for show and tell. But when it comes to the Capitol, Officer Fanone, who was assaulted and tortured that day, told me that he can't get booked on Fox to tell his story. This is the same Fox where you heard this same host recently call to defund the United States military for being too woke, as generals defended diversity in their efforts to root out domestic extremism in their ranks.
We are sending our tax dollars to this military to an attempt to weed out so-called extremists, which just means conservative evangelical, as far as I can tell. We're paying for that? Why is Congress not saying we're not going to give you a penny until all of this is eradicated from the military budget? Nothing. This is my offer to you. Nothing.
It's not just Ingram who is disparaging military brass. She's just copycatting this guy.
Milley got the job because he is obsequious. He knows who to suck up to, and he's more than happy to do it. Feed him a script, and he will read it. Hard to believe that man wears a uniform. He's that unimpressive. He's not just a pig, he's stupid.
Unimpressive, he calls him. What does he mean? You know, setting aside any disagreements that he has with Milley, Milley's not immune from criticism. But look at the stripes on his sleeve. 10 of them we counted. Each one of those overseas service bars is 6 months deployed. That is 5 years. That is more time than Tucker Carlson spent at his probably third-choice boarding school. Tucker Carlson didn't serve. His biggest achievement is having 9 lives in the world of cable news, making a bow tie famous, and getting away with promoting conspiracy theories night after night after night.
The question is, and this is the question that we should be meditating on day in and day out, is how do we get out of this vortex, this cycle, before it's too late? How do we save this country before we become Rwanda?
That isn't just a dog whistle. It's a white whistle.
So he reads about white rage as if it's totally real. It's a medical condition. And by the way, since it's a medical condition, at what age can you catch white rage, by the way? Most of us assumed that our 2-year-olds were just teething. Now we know it's their whiteness that's making them so angry.
He pretends white rage doesn't exist. He is white rage.